who is reporting to city attorney, but not really asking Charlie to be here in the role of city attorney alone, although I guess there are a couple of legal points to touch on. But it's really more because of the breadth of Charlie's experience over a long, some say extremely long, career in assisting cities around the Southland with their legal work, and that has involved a lot of development proposals, a lot of development scenarios, and a lot of city financial situations from which he's gleaned really a wealth of experience that I think will pertain to what we're talking about tonight. So I think our wrap-up comments tonight will come from Charlie. That's
it. Are you done? You know, for somebody that doesn't have any hair to be talking about how old I am. Thank you, folks. I wanted to just make a few comments tonight. First of all, let me explain kind of who I am and what I'm doing here. I am not a city employee. I am what's called a contract city attorney. Most smaller cities hire a law firm to be their city attorney because it's too expensive to hire a staff that you would have to support the city attorney and pay pensions and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not an employee. I do not live in this city, but I represent it, and I wanted to come here tonight and talk to you about why we're even here. First of all, I know there was some criticism about the lack of detail, and somebody said we came here unprepared. You know, you can't win for losing because the city wasn't required to hold this hearing, this meeting. In the normal development process, it would come along much further into the process when things were much more set. This city council, unlike other city councils that I've represented, is very much dedicated to trying to lay these projects out for public inspection and comment very early in the process. For those of you who came to the meeting, and I think, Dan, you were there, went to the meeting at the other one, and we talked about before we even had a deal, and as it turned out, that deal fell apart. But we wanted to bring to you the idea that the city was contemplating doing a cannabis facility on Industrial Avenue. Well, similarly, the city wanted to come here tonight and explain to you that it's considering doing a project that you've heard about tonight. There was close to a deal with Mr. Champlin at one time. That deal fell apart. There is no deal right now. We're still talking, and we think that we're moving towards maybe having some basis for talking to him. I want to tell you that the discussion, which is not binding on him or us, which is general, is that, first of all, I should say, Mr. Champlin is as somebody noted, is an experienced developer of hotels, primarily resort hotels. This, however, is not intended to be a resort hotel. It is intended to be a high-end business hotel. That's why it's scaled down, because there's not enough business traffic to support a 40 stories worth of business hotel. It is situated next to the port because the port, in general, supports this concept because they bring a lot of people in to do business with them, and those people have only, a lot of them are high-end executives who come in to sign contracts with the port and so on. They're very important to the port, and therefore they're very important to the city because, as you've heard, the city gets a substantial part of its revenue is a percentage of what the port makes. They would like to see a high-end business hotel right there because then those people would not have to travel off into Oxnard, Ventura, or wherever they have to go to get a hotel that meets their business standards. And the Holiday Inn Express, which is a good facility, is not in that category. This would not be a 5-star resort hotel. It would probably be a 4-star business hotel if it goes forward. The developer is contemplating also doing an adjoining facility, which would be Class A office space. There is no Class A office space in this city, none at this point. That means that substantial businesses, people like me, would probably not open offices here because they're looking to have offices that clients come to and are, they gotta have the gloss and all that, because you're gonna charge them a lot of money, you gotta look like you're worth it. So this is his concept at this point in time. It is not going to be, and one of the, I heard about it's not on the beach. Well, no, it's not. It's deliberately not on the beach because the people that would stay there are unlikely to be on the beach. They come in, they're business owners, businessmen, they're going to do their business, they're going to stay there, and then they're going to leave. That doesn't mean there won't be some tourists that will use the facility, but that's not the main marketing that he is looking for. So I just want you to understand that this is the concept that is being discussed so that you understand if your comments should be directed towards what he's actually contemplating. You should have the opportunity to have input every step of the way. That's why we're here tonight, is to give you the earliest possible opportunity to have that input. And there will be other opportunities. But here's the thing, folks. It's your responsibility as citizens and residents who will be affected by this to start paying attention. The city puts up agendas, it puts things on its website, it publishes notices, and then people say, well, I didn't know about it. That's because you're not paying attention. You need to watch what your government is doing. You need to make it a practice to go on once a month and read the agendas so you know what the city is doing. And you need to show up when you have a concern. You need to bring your voice to bear because politicians listen to people when they show up. That's what happens. So you should come to these meetings and you should say what you said tonight. All right? If you don't like this project, you have every right not to like it. Come and tell them that. Okay? I'm not here to apologize for this project. I don't care whether this project gets built or not in the ultimate sense. It's not going to block my view. It's not going to pay for police to protect my home. Okay? It's going to affect you. You should care and you should show up. All right? That's my message to you about your role in this, is you need to go and express what you want. All right? That's your responsibility and you need to do it. Now, when you show up to be an effective citizen, don't just come in and say, I don't like it, because that's not my backyard. Every city council hears that. You need to have reasons, and they need to be responsible reasons. Traffic, view shed, noise, congestion. Okay, those are reasonable things to be concerned about, and your council will listen to you. Now, that doesn't mean that they will make a decision based upon what the people in this room say. There are 23,000 people in this city, and they have to think about all of them. But let's face it, the greasy wheel gets the grease. The most effective role a citizen can do is to show up and express their opinion, okay? So, let me address one more thing. The reason, I've been in this city since the beginning of May. You may tell by looking at me, I've been doing this for a very long time. Is that me? No. Okay. I've been doing this for a long time. I've represented cities for a long time. I was the city attorney, and quite often I'm a city attorney for more than one city at a time, not at the present moment, but that happens. I was the city attorney in Cathedral City, which is down in the desert, for 20 years. It's located between Palm Springs and Rancho Mirage. While I was there, that city began to experience what your city is going through right now. And that is, it began to run short of revenue. It happens, and that city did what your city has done, which is it began to cut services and personnel. If you don't realize that your city has basically cut a number of people from its staff, then you haven't been paying attention. It has. It has cut its budget for personnel considerably. I heard a complaint about police overtime. Do you know why they have so much overtime? There aren't enough of them. That's not hard to figure out, folks. There aren't enough of them. If the chief were standing up here, he would tell you, I need more officers, because he said it to the council the other night, and they said, we don't have the money. Okay? You show up, you'll hear this, you'll know this. Services have been cut. I heard about Miranda Park and how it's gone to hell. Well, of course it's gone to hell. There's no money to fix it up. That's why it's gone to hell. Okay? This is cause and effect. It's not a mystery. There's not enough money to do all of these things. For, I don't even know how many years, I don't represent, but it's 5 or 6 or 7 or a number of years, you have run a deficit in your budget of between $700,000 and $1 million, 2 or 3 every year. That's called what do they call it? Structural deficit, which is an accounting term meaning you're in big doo-doo, okay? It means that you run your business without enough revenue and too much expense. So, when Mr. Butler, your new city manager, who's been here a year today, was hired, when I was hired, when Mr. Stewart was hired, we were given the direction, fix the structural deficit. Find revenue, because we can't cut much more without starting to bleed, okay? I saw this in Cathedral City. They eliminated their entire Park and Recs department. So essentially has Fort Hueneme. That wasn't enough. And because the police down there, they have their own police department also, their budget was, almost 70% of their budget was police. Well, you can only cut so much out of the 30%. And you have to start cutting public safety. They had a police department, they had a fire department. They fought it, eventually they started having to lay off police officers. They stopped sweeping the streets before they did this. They stopped sweeping the streets. They stopped watering the grass in the medians and the parks, which died. And finally, they had to fire police officers. So, what is the answer to that? Well, there's really only 2 ways for a city to have revenue. One is taxes. That's where you or somebody, and in the case of a hotel, it's not you, it's a visitor, pays the tax to the hotel, which then sends it to the city, okay? Or you pay a tax. Or you generate it in terms of fees and the like. We can, under Prop 218, we can only charge so much for fees. The fee has to be related to the value of the service, so we really have nowhere to go with that. Economic development is the usual answer. Fort Hueneme is a very unusual city. I've been doing economic development since the mid-'80s. It's a very unusual city because it's basically a U wrapped around stuff in the middle, the port and the base, which we do not control, and which and the port generates revenue for us at least, but the base really doesn't. So where do we get revenue? I heard people say I'm a taxpayer. I think what you mean by that probably is you pay property tax. Property tax provides the bulk of revenue to most governments. But because of the complexities of California property law, this city only receives 13% of every dollar paid in property tax. The rest goes to the county, it goes to special districts, it goes to fire, it doesn't come here. So 13 cents of every dollar that you pay in property tax pays for all the services, goes towards the services that you receive in the city. It's not a lot. And in older cities and other cities that have that fit under a certain structure, it's up to 40%. Huh?
Old Prop 13,
Yeah.
anybody who's under old Prop 13 doesn't pay.
Prop 13, I tell you what, I loved it when it passed, but it's been a major problem for cities because it's created an absence of revenue. It's good and it's bad, like most things in life. So you look at economic development. This city is built out essentially. You don't have any land for a big box retailer. You don't have any land for auto malls. You don't have any land for the big sales tax generators that a lot of cities use to solve their problems. So the city council looked around and they said, what can we do in this city that will generate revenue? And as it happened, cannabis was coming along, and they decided to jump on that wagon. And they've approved 3 dispensaries, which will generate a reasonable amount of revenue, because the city has a policy of requiring that any licensee to operate a cannabis business has to pay 5% of their gross revenue to the city. Now, you can't get that in most businesses, but you can for cannabis, because it's a very unusual business. It's under a special licensing scheme. So that's one of the ways that it is going to be done. We hope to put that business on Industrial Avenue. It would have generated hundreds of thousands of dollars. Didn't work out. This one, I mean, we don't even have the deal, but if we get it, it may not work out. All you can do is play the hands and hope that one of them wins the pot. So the other thing that we can do is TOT, Transit Occupancy Tax, Bed Tax. That can generate a lot of money. Steve wasn't involved in this, but I did do some rough calculations when we were talking to not just this developer, but 2 or 3, trying to figure out how much can this contribute to the problem that we have. A 12-story business hotel, which will usually has a higher occupancy rate than a resort hotel, because resort hotels are very susceptible to ups and downs in the business economy, in the general economy. Most businesses have to travel regardless. So if you take all of that and you apply it, I calculate that conservatively, if it's built, this hotel will probably generate somewhere between $500,000 and $700,000 a year in TOT, every single year as long as it's operating. Not one-time revenue like the sale of the property, every single year. That's why that's important. It is continuous, annual, replicating revenue. In addition, of course, there's the property tax. And in addition, we have negotiated, we haven't done this deal, but we let this developer know that he has to pay, if he does build a office tower, he's going to have to pay some kind of extra revenue, because that doesn't generate TOT. It just generates property tax. Now, it will generate like $125,000 a year in property tax. I mean, that's a lot of money, but it's not enough. So we're going to extract, because we own the property and are going to sell it, we can require things that we couldn't require just as a city. So believe me, these things are being very tightly, toughly negotiated, because we know what the problem is, and we know and have been told our job is to solve it. So we are squeezing as hard as we can to generate as much revenue as we can, and still leave enough on the table that private enterprise wants to do the deal. Okay?
If they're coming here just business, you're, not saying it's going to be a vacation place. So why would it matter if they're just coming from the UK to do business? Can't they do business up the road? Still call why need? I mean, if it's just a business thing, then...
It's not just a business thing, it's a high-end business thing.
Yeah, but to build a high-end business...
Where? On Market Street?
Yeah.
No. Why? I mean, who wants to stay in a high-end hotel on Market Street? And here's the reason. Here's the reason. We have not had one proposal to build a hotel on Market Street. Not one. Because nobody wants to do that. We're not saying...